next thing that we're going to discuss in Chapter 5 is the possible generic spellings of triads. Now, that sounds like a very large task, doesn't it? When we say, oh my goodness, how many possible triads are there? Well, the fact is, there are lots of possible triads using sharps and flats, but if you reduce it to just the alphabet letters, there are only 7 combinations. So let's write those 7 combinations down. Now, we're not using any sharps and flats, so we can start a triad with A. We can start one with B, C, D, E, F, and G. And those are the only possible starting notes until we start to add sharps and flats. Now, remember that they're built in thirds. And when we have a third, that means we skip a letter of the alphabet. So we're going to start with A, skip B, and so the middle note of this triad is going to be a C. Now, this is the root, this is the chordal third. Now let's get the chordal fifth. And if you don't know those terms, you need to watch the intro video. So now we're on C, so you hold your thumb up and you say C, D, E, makes a third. So here is our chordal fifth. Let's do it for B. B, C, D, D, E, F. Okay, so there we've left out C and E. Now let's do this one. C, we're going to skip D and go to E. We're going to skip F and go to G. Next one on D, skip E, go to F, skip G, go to A. Next one is on E, so we skip F and go to G, skip A and go to B, F, A, C, I hope you're doing this with me, and then finally G, B, D. So these are the only possible combinations that can form triads. There aren't any other possible combinations. Now, eventually in Chapter 5, we're going to mix up the order of the different notes in one triad. So we might say CEA instead of ACE. But it's still the same combination. These are called root position spellings. And this is important because even when we see the letters scrambled up in a different order than what you see right here, we are still always going to refer to them by these names, ACE, BDF, CEG, and so on. Now, one more little detail. So what I want to do is label the columns. So this column on the left is always the root of the chord. That means when we put it on the staff, that's the low note. The middle column is always the chordal third. Okay, so the chordal third is our middle column. That means it's the middle note when we write it on the staff. And finally, the chordal fifth. Okay, so there are the names. So then if I were to ask you, what is the chordal third of the E triad? You'd say G. And if I were to ask you, what's the chordal fifth of the F triad? You would say C, because that's the right-hand column.